System Shock. That is a name that is bigger than the game itself. Its gameplay, mechanics that make up that gameplay, and every one of its elements cannot be described as completely unique to the immersive sim genre. When you take all those elements though, you get something like System Shock that you did not get before. It is not the first immersive sim video game, but it's one of the first, especially when it comes to spearheading the genre into the popularity it has today. The original release of System Shock would garner sequel and spiritual successors of the genre that will follow in its footsteps, games like Thief, Deus Ex, Bioshock, Dishonored, Prey, and so on. Finally, someone would take the challenge of remaking the original 1994 game, and in 2023, the System Shock remake would hit the markets, and I would finally get around to playing it 2 years later. Let me start the review by saying I haven't played the original game. When it was released, I was still a long way away from being born. And when I finally got around to playing Bioshock and hearing whispers of a game that inspired that released a few decades past, System Shock was simply too old for me to give it a go. Simply due to the fact that playing older games on PC can be a lot of hassle with newer Windows versions, optimization, outdated gaming mechanics, and so on. So when the remake was announced and released, it was definitely on my radar. The game is detailed in its environment, like how one would expect from an immersive sim. What is an immersive sim? How do these games differ from single-player FPS games with a bit of exploration and RPG mechanics? Is Fallout an immersive sim? Why? Why not? While the genre is not fully defined, nor does it have very rigid definitions of what it needs to be, the most important component of the genre is freedom. The game gives you a set of tools and an objective. How you complete that objective, which path you take, and everything is completely up to you. You can play by rigid rules and treat it like an FPS, but you are sure to come across different routes to your objectives, some of them making you feel pretty clever when you find them out. Immersive sims are not a million miles apart from FPS RPG games, but their open-ended structure gives them unique flavor, and even if you can't define the genre fully, you'll recognize an immersive sim when you see one. When I finally got around to playing the game, I was first surrounded by the atmosphere, carrying the torch of retrofuturism at every single one of its components. The game starts with a thumping beat and pixelated and somewhat animated graphics while still holding on to a gritty art style. Neon lights flash from every crevice in a world fully reminiscent of Blade Runner cyberpunk aesthetics. Every machine is big and bulky, and even though technology is decades or even centuries away from current real-world technology, those devices are made in a very 80s way, alien-like in its approach to environmental design, although a lot less Geiger-esque and more robotic. You are a hacker. In a small apartment, in an apartment complex who knows how many stories long in an urban hell full of these buildings. You take control of your character for the first time here. You get to experience the big yellow button opening doors, the shower, the toilets, and so on, and see how the game feels. When you click on an object, a small text description appears at the top of the screen, with a short description written almost in a text adventure way, seeping into the 90s game design instantaneously. Long story short, you get to do some retro-style hacking in a bulky computer on your desk, get caught, and the police then take you away. You awake in a room you don't recognize, with a person speaking over you. They have a proposition for you. They have realized that you are a competent hacker from your escapades, and they want you to disable the ethical boundaries of an artificial intelligence for your freedom. You do so, and they drug you, making you fall into the slumber of sleep once again. You wake up again, in a medical room filled to the brim with medical equipment, walls full of wiring and panels, and no living person around. You will slowly realize that you are in a space station controlled by the AI Shodan, the very one you disabled the ethical restrictions of. You slowly get your hands on a few weapons, starting with a trusty wrench, and explore the station to find out the consequence of a seemingly very simple action you have done under an ultimatum from an unknown source who was keeping you prisoner. Still though, as you wade through the stations filled with killer robots, cyborgs, and mutated humans, and come across the countless bodies of people left in the wake of Shodan's complete and utter meltdown and god complex, you cannot stop yourself from thinking that you are responsible for all the carnage you see. The story of the game is simple. After the opening sequence, you have one main objective: stop Shodan. Everything you do is to get to that main objective. There are options along the way, but not in a way where the story is impacted, or you get different endings. No, just secrets and additional content to go through. The game is simple, and so is its premise, gameplay, and everything else honestly. The only complex things about the game is the cultivation of the different gameplay mechanics and how they interact with each other to create that gameplay. The game is extremely fun to interact with. The inventory management system is quite tight with how much inventory space it gives you, and you will definitely need to make sacrifices and weapon types and loot along the way because of it. Different temporary upgrades will give you small boosts, and the weapons upgrades you will find will focus you towards holding on to certain weapons. But even if you explore every crevice, the ammo you find will not be enough, forcing you to use other weapons and their ammo as well. In games, I usually find my own weapon or gun and stick with that as long as I can without much experimentation. But because of the loot scarcity and inventory management, which seems like it would force you to stick to only a few weapons, but no, I tried almost every weapon in the game. I used the weapons I did not enjoy as much against less aggressive enemies I could keep my distance with, so I wouldn't waste my ammo for guns I enjoyed using that did more damage. Some buff items, like the Berserker that increase your melee damage, were items completely useless to my playthrough, so I did not use every item. Even if the item variance in the game is pretty limited in terms of buff or healing items, some of these limited items can be obsolete depending on your playstyle. Other than these active items, you can also pretty much pick up any object in the environment. These items are almost always just fodder you can recycle by turning them into a recycling machine or vaporizing them into smaller components and recycling them for currency later. Although if you recycle the objects without vaporizing them, you get more currency. The inventory space they keep until then is much larger, so it's a balancing act on inventory like all other items you can pick up and use. There is also a dumbwaiter system where you can transport items from one level to another without carrying them on you, but the space of the dumbwaiter is like a tenth of your inventory, so it's a mechanic well thought out but restricted too much to be useful aside from carrying bigger objective items around and keeping them in there until you know what those items are for. Aside from items, the weapons are detailed, with different shooting modes and upgrades, ammo types, and overall variety, which lets you choose between how to handle combat encounters. The game does not appear that way at first, but the combat in the game can be very fast paced and reactive, and using different weapons, grenades, the environments, and so on can work to the benefit of the player. The same variety can also be found in exploration, which is one of the most important facets of immersive sims. There are secret rooms, loot, different ways to approach rooms, hiding spots, audio and text logs, and puzzles to solve to enter different rooms, most of which are optional. The wall puzzles usually spin the cables in a different spots to make it travel to the destination or flick the switches to make a certain amount of electricity go through. The type of 2D puzzles found in flash-based browser games. But even though they are not the most innovative puzzles, they were not too frequent to get sick of and were a welcome break from the gunplay once in a while. Another puzzle type of encounter is the cyberspace, where you can float through the digital area of the space station, fight with polygonal defense systems, and activate different things that open doors in the real world or do different things that affect the space station in various ways. These cyberspace sections were fun to play through, although the time it took without much variation in its gameplay did make me want to skip some of them. Even if I didn't, I think more variance in those gameplay sections could have worked to make them not feel as repetitive. Aside from that, the exploration, while not groundbreaking, was fun. The amount of scrap you can collect means that you can basically buy anything you come across and still have plenty of currency left over. Because what you can buy from the vending machines is limited, you don't get to run out of currency, but run out of things to buy. In addition, the gun upgrades are usually base upgrades like upgrading your ammo capacity, damage, and so on. Granting different, more creative things with gun upgrades to change how that particular weapon functions in gameplay could have made them more interesting to play around with. You find various upgrades to yourself around the space station that you can use with energy. You replenish energy with different stations you can use indefinitely with time restrictions around the environment, and also items that work similar to healing items that you can use to instantly replenish your energy. The upgrades that use energy range from the ability to actually sprint pressing shift and rocket boots to upgrades you can enable and disable, like the ability to see loot on the minimap, energy shield, enemy trackers, and so on. You don't have to choose between upgrades or making a real decision on how to go around using them. You find them and you can use all of them at once or none at all. The game does not possess character progression mechanics that will be found in every game, even brushing RPGs starting from the 2010s. Although I think the developers are well aware of the systems that would be used in such games in the modern era, their outlook towards creation of this game seems to be one of remake rather than adapt. Although autosaves and indefinite saving via the pause screen and other modern conveniences can be found in the game, many aspects of what could be expected from modern gaming are not here, simply due to the fact that they were not there in 1994 as well. If you're not a fan of backtracking or the game lacking any quest objectives or markers, you might have some difficulties with the game. The respawn mechanic that can waste a good deal of time if you die in a certain place without opening up a respawn station on the level you have died is also the cherry on top. I got lost multiple times in the game, wandering around the level without knowing what my objective is for up to an hour before looking it up, finding out that I have to backtrack to a level I have last been in 6 hours ago, do something there, then come up to the level I'm currently at to complete my objective. Then Shodan says something cryptic but also very video game like, "Ha, you thought you'd stop me, but I'm going to do something inconceivably evil on the engineering level. Stop me if you can." Which is the only clue you will be getting for your next objective. Suppose you have to pick up an item taking up 4 slots of inventory from a completely different level, and bringing up the progress or stand in front of 4 monitors in an upper level to find the code. That is unique to every playthrough, by the way, so you can't look it up. Well, bad luck. Don't even get me started on the digits of code found in CPU rooms at every level that you have to then find out one by one, remember or write down, and use it close to the end of the game to progress, which I thought were showing the number of CPU nodes in that level, and had to backtrack to every single one of the rooms to find out. Is that fun? I don't think so. That is not to say that the game does not have any moments incorporated into backtracking, new enemies in old levels, or unlocking new things you couldn't unlock before, as backtrack gives a certain Castlevania energy to the exploration that I adore. So my criticism of the backtracking can only be so negative. With freedom of gameplay comes the potential for boredom and wasting time, and even though these cases seem to have simple fixes, I would find such things much more annoying or even game ruining in a game more streamlined and similar to modern video games. But things like lack of objectives, being lost, backtracking, and dying over and over again to the same boss that basically one-shots you with almost every attack are kind of the touchstones of the genre. It doesn't entirely stop them from being annoying, but I can't stop myself from commending the developer team on staying so faithful to the original, even when that faithfulness leads to archaic gameplay design and annoyances. System Shock is a portal to early PC gaming, a remake uncompromising of its era and style, even if it's to its detriment at times. The story is simple, ending abruptly and to the point. Gameplay is also simple and limited at times, but it is also layered. The game is an ode to the original and an invitation for everyone to experience System Shock as it once was, as it once felt around the time of its release. To people who like the immersive sim genre, playing this is a no-brainer, even if the gameplay mechanics do not reach the depths it will reach with its spiritual successors in the future, and certain aspects of it will seem to be lacking from a modern lens of gameplay. I have not played as faithful a remake that completely keeps the soul of the original, Cyborg, Carnage, AI, the dark, dreary atmosphere and all, that bleeps and bloops all the way into the very depths of cyberspace and retro PC gaming.